Hi, I'm Rachel Tessman from stampyourartout.com. On October 23rd, I shared some fun alternate cards and boxes that I created with the contents of the October 2024 Nests of Christmas Paper Pumpkin Kit from Stampin' Up! And today I'd like to share with you a few more ideas, several cards, an easy gift idea, and a scrapbook page layout. I'll be using a few extra supplies as I share. You can find these items listed below and linked to my online store. You can also find links for more information regarding paper pumpkin kits, for starting your subscription, for my blog post linked to today's projects, and for my October 23rd post sharing the other cards and boxes that I made. If you don't have this October kit, or you've used it all up by now, I'm hoping that you'll still be able to adapt what you see here in this video to products that you do have. Let's get started. For the first card, I'm going to be using this card base, the Cardinal, little chickadee, and those branch ephemera pieces from the kit. We're going to set those aside though, and I'm going to bring in our white cardstock. We have two different choices. We have the basic white cardstock, which is a warmer, brighter type of white, and then we have the cooler and a little, not so bright, white willow. The white willow cardstock I have found is a closer white to the kits than the basic white, or the basic white. So I'm going to be using that for this card because a lot of the white is going to show up from the kit pieces, okay? So let's go ahead and cut our 12 by 12 down to 4 1/4 by 12. And then we're going to trim off. We're going to actually cut this down. Instead of having an 11-inch piece, we're going to cut it to 9 inches, which means we have several more sections of this white that we can trim into little strips. So before I cut that all the way off, I'm going to actually cut the strips off. So we're going to cut off 1/2 inch strips, and we're going to do several. And I already made an error. My measurement, I told you it was going to be 9 inches. It's going to be 7.5 inches in this direction. I was doing my math incorrectly. And then we're going to score at 2 inches. Now we've cut off 6 strips, and we already have those here. We're going to be using those 6 strips, and then we'll also need 2 more strips, and we're going to cut that from this piece here, and it's going to be 1/2 inch. And then we're going to turn it in this direction so that we have a 5.5 inch strip and another 5.5 inch strip. Some of you may have made cards like this before. It's a lattice type of card. It's so pretty. I had to make one with this kit. So we're going to start, and we're going to use our grid paper. Our grid paper is going to come in very handy with this. We're going to position our card base, and it's folded, and it's going to look like this on our grid paper so that we have this edge here, the left edge, 1/2 inch past the dark center line. This is letting us know that our piece here that we're going to attach is going to stay connected to that dark center line on its left-hand edge. So we're going to flip this over, and I'm laying it down on here just so I can use it as a guide, and I'm going to add my adhesive. Now you could use like multi-purpose liquid glue if you want to. I'm just putting a strip of seal adhesive on here, keeping this edge right on that spot here, positioning this piece. So again, it's lining up with that dark line that's going through the center of my grid paper. We'll do the same thing on this side. And then I'm just going to press into that with my bone folder to burnish or, use a little pressure and heat to make sure that that's attached. Now, we're going to use our grid paper again. We're opening up our card. This is going to be the front of our card. And we're opening it up and flipping it over because we're going to attach these thin strips, these shorter strips along this side of those 2 vertical lines that are going through here. Now we have, and let's just draw a line with a pencil. If you're looking at your grid paper, I'm just going to emphasize this line here. If we're looking at that grid paper, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 squares underneath in this area here, right? It's 14 squares up to this edge. We're going to start with the bottom. And again, I've lined up this edge here with one of those lines. So we're going to connect this down in this area like that, so that it doesn't go beyond this line or this line, because I'm using the lines up here as a guide. I'm going to use the multi-purpose liquid glue, and I've transferred it into a fine tip, precision tip bottle, so that it's a little bit easier. I'm going to set something on this so it doesn't move. We'll just put that on there. Okay, and that way I know that I have this section here that I can add adhesive to, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And with the fine tip, precision tip glue bottle, I can make sure that I don't get too much glue on there. And the glue will be a stronger hold. Okay, we'll add that in. Press it down and hold. And then we'll go ahead and do the same thing to the middle. And the middle of our card, you will see right here to here, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. So if we can attach that middle strip on our grid paper in that area, then we'll have that smack dab in the middle. So again, just a little bit of glue, a little bit of glue, do another strip. There you go. All right, so these 2 strips and these 2 strips are going to fill in the spaces, and this you can basically just eyeball. So if you lay them all on there first, you can see about how far apart they should be from each other. There's maybe like a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch in between. So I'm just going to lift up one, add my adhesive in there. And the nice thing with glue is you could see as I was wiggling it as I was going, just to make sure that everything was lined up. You have wiggle room. You have time to kind of maneuver it before it bonds. So because this kind of a card has an open area in the front, you don't want to do your writing or your messages right underneath that section. So we're going to kind of give it a background, okay? From here to here measures 3.5 inches. I'm going to take the green section from this card. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut along the separation and flip it around and cut along the other separation, which should give us a 4.25 inch wide piece here. And it does. And then we'll cut this at 3.5 inches. This gets added to the inside of the card, and you can do that with the glue or with the tape or adhesive that comes in your kit. I always use this stuff because it goes so much faster. But yeah, any kind of adhesive to connect. All right, so we have that on there. And it's kind of a little, you know, it's kind of boring in there. We have this space to write in right here. I thought I would decorate this up a little bit. So let's bring in the imagery from the kit. I want the cardinal to sit, I don't know, somewhere in here maybe. And then we can use this piece underneath, kind of like a little nest. And maybe we'll cut some of this. And we could either use like this piece here or both of them, although I want to use one on the inside. So let's take a peek at what these will look like if we use them on the inside. That one looks good. I think I could use that one there. This one, of course, is fuller, but I think I like this one better because it tilts more to that side that I wanted on. So I'm going to add that. And then we can stamp something on the inside here and on the front as soon as we know which ladder or strip of lattice there that we're going to have exposed. So let's lay this out again. We could even position the cardinal up a little higher. I think I like that better. And then stamp down here somewhere, maybe stamp in here. I know where my imagery is going to sit approximately. And now I want to add some words. I'm bringing red ink in, real red, just to kind of emphasize the red in the cardinal. Let's mount our stamp. And now we're going to mask off with a piece of tape some portions of that stamp that we do not want to get inked. So I'm going to put tape over the top of this season. Inking up those words, joyful thoughts to you, pulling this portion of the tape off. There we go. Set that aside somewhere where it's not going to get messy. And I think I'm going to put it on the third one. I love that we have clear stamps with paper pumpkin kits. You can see right through them and know exactly where we're stamping. Joyful thoughts to you. And then on the inside is where I'm going to put this season. So I need to clean off my stamp. You can use this Stampin' Scrub and Mist, or you could use water on the Stampin' Chamois. And then you'll want to stamp your image down onto your scrap paper a few times to make sure that there's no ink where you don't want it to go, right? Sometimes our cleanup pads are dirtier than we think they are. So now it's time to cover up the other words. We're going to cover up the joyful thoughts to you. And we're inking up, oops, I don't think I got it all. That Y dips down a little bit here. And we're covering up all of that so that we don't get any ink on it, inking up this season, peeling this off, setting it where we know it's going to be safe, throwing it in the garbage eventually so that it's out of our way and we don't get ink on our hands. Okay, and then this can go right up here. And again, we're stamping the sentiments down first because once we start adding all of our imagery, we're going to have bulk behind areas and we don't want to have to stamp on lumps. Okay, we'll put this ink away. We're going to take out the Coastal Cabana ink. This is a color that is in the kit. You can see little hints of it with the shaded spruce in here. And we're going to use it as kind of like a snowy color. So we'll take our stamp that has the little speckles and we'll mount that onto our block. And we're going to ink that up and we're going to stamp that in random areas. So let's lay our cardinal back down. Okay, and now I'll start adhering all of my pieces. And I'm going to add all of these so that they are raised up on dimensionals. So I think what I'm going to do is connect the cardinal first to these pieces. And I'm just going to use a dimensional, and I've held this card down so it doesn't move too much. I've held it down with the stamp pad so that it doesn't move too much. Now this is loose, right? It's just connected to each other, but it's in the position that I want it. And now I'm going to add the cardinal into that space. We don't want the cardinal to look like it's tipping over. Okay, so then on the back side of all of this is where I'm going to add more dimensionals. And because I want my card to go through the mail without having a lot of bulk, I'm going to try to avoid putting any dimensional right in this spot. And something else that I need to think of too is where can I add the dimensionals? So I can add one here. That will be hidden. I can add one here. So I'm just avoiding that middle spot, right? I can even add a half of one right here. And maybe one under the head. So I'm just lifting up and positioning. And that looks pretty good. And now I will take off the backings. I've got another version of this card that is the first one I made, and I am completely in love with it, so I had to make a second one. Okay, one last thing is just to add a little bit of bling. So I brought in my gems from my Tinsel Gems 4-pack, and I'm going to use the green color here. And that just brings it a little bit more joy. Here's the other version of that card, and you can see here that I have multiple layers again, but my dimensionals are specifically hidden so that there's not two dimensionals sandwiching each other, right? The gems are the same, but they're the pink ones, and they're over the top of the red berries so that it looks like they're red because they're slightly transparent. Here's the inside of that one. Now, how did I get this little piece here? Well, this gorgeous little layer here, this one that's very full behind here, I cut into some pieces so that I could make multiples of this card. Let me show you that. So you can see this is the back layer, and I cut it straight through here, and then I cut that piece into two. On the inside, this looked really great by itself here, but I could also see that corner having this piece, right? Or even this piece. So I'm gonna make more of these because this is just a gosh darn pretty card. I love these lattice cards. I hope that you enjoyed that idea. Let me share with you another card idea. But this next card idea, I am gonna use the willow, the white willow again. We're gonna cut at 4 1/4 inches. We're going to make sure that we have an 11-inch long piece. And then we're going to score at 5 1/2 inches, which is half of 11, so that we have a folded card base. Our basic black that we're bringing in is 4 3/4 inches by 3 1/2 inches. And that is large enough to cover up the window. So this is also going to become a layer. We're going to use up one of those pieces that we cut off of our card that we just demonstrated. We'll be using this banner piece, but we're going to flip it over because we don't want to have a lot of green foil because this side already has some of that green foiling on it. We are going to use this envelope, both pieces. So we're going to cut all along the score line. Actually, I'm going to grab a different one because the alignment's kind of off on this one. Hang on. Okay. And if the alignment is off on your print here, you can just adjust your cutting a little bit. Like you can trim off any extra on one side or the other to balance it out, and then do your cutting in the direction that you need to. So for this piece on this side, we're going to trim this at 2 inches wide. So this side needs to be 2 inches wide. And on this side, again, if you have to kind of trim this up to match the depth of the line on this side, go ahead and do that first. And then make sure that this piece is 1 1/8 inches. Okay, so I'm using this side of my trimmer to measure that. So altogether we have 3 1/8 inch. This piece here we're going to trim at just under, actually I think we can trim it, yeah, just a little under 2 inches. So I'm going 1/16 of an inch under 2 inches here, as you can see, and making sure that this line is parallel all the way down. And then we'll slice. We'll set that aside for later. For this piece, we're going to trim at 3 inches in this direction. And then for this piece, we're going to trim at 3 inches. I'm cutting through 2 layers. Forget how thick it is. Like that, so that we have pieces that look like this. And this card that I'm going to share with you was inspired by a card that I received from Shannon West, a friend of mine, a Stampin' Up! employee, actually. She did such a nice job on that card. I love it. So we're going to go ahead and have that same type of pattern. It's kind of going the opposite way of hers, but similar. We'll set these over here, move this out of the way, and we'll start assembling. I think frame pieces are easier to put on if you use the multi-purpose liquid glue, because you can kind of shift it a little bit if you have to make sure all the edges line up. This is going to get added with dimensionals, so we'll wait to do that until we have added all of our layers on top of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and position them where they look right. And it's approximately a little over 1/8 of an inch away from the outside edges. So I'm going to take and start adhering the pieces. Actually, you know what? Let's take and add some of that multi-purpose liquid glue to the inside here too, and that'll sandwich the two pieces together so that they become one layer. Now you may have noticed a little bit of coloring on my grid paper. That's because I did this whole card completely and realized I did it with the wrong color base cardstock. I used basic white instead of white willow, and the inside does match up with some white from our kit. So it looks a lot better when you're using white willow. We're gonna grab our blending brush and some Coastal Cabana ink, which I think is a really nice complementary ink to this cool green. So we're gonna take the Coastal Cabana and our banner piece, the back side of it, rub off a little bit before we add it so that we're not putting dense color on top all at once. And now we have just kind of a little light green, cool green haze on that paper. And that will stand out against this white a little bit. We're gonna take and trim off the end so that we're getting rid of a couple of those little triangle pieces. Then we'll ink up our stamp that says Happy Holidays. I'm gonna use Tuxedo Memento black ink here, keeping the banner cut to the left, stamping that down. We'll take and add this with dimensionals, which I guess I am running out of. And we'll add that to the front of our card. And then we'll add a dimensional on the back side of the left and a little seal adhesive on the back side of the right. Peel off the backing. Add this so that it's right up against the green edge but not covering it up, and so that this middle falls in line with the separation of these two pieces here. Then we'll grab our, what is this, Tinsel Gems 4-pack and our Take Your Pick tool, and we'll just put a little bit of embellishing here with the green gems. On the inside, we're going to take this piece, we're going to add adhesive to the back side, open it up, add this right at the bottom, and then take, I prefer when you're cutting a lot to use a long bladed scissors, but you could use your snips and just trim up the sides here. So let me show you the comparison of the two insides if you were to use, that's the wrong one, hang on. If you were to use basic white with this versus white willow with this. So there is a big difference when you're seeing them like that. So this is the first card I made accidentally with basic white, although it still looks great. It's just not what I prefer. So here's two different versions. Now, do you notice there's a difference here? The difference is that we have this layer on the back side, and because we have that layer on the back side, which came from here, that black layer had to cover up more of this. All this foiling I covered up by having a slightly wider layer there, and that one measures 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. So it's just a 1/4 of an inch difference in each direction. And there we go. There's the two different styles of cards from there. I want to show you another idea that you can do with your envelopes. This is something that I thought of because my grandma Tessman, my dad's mom, years ago, she used to, when she was around, she used to give all of us grandkids, and there were several grandkids, she used to give us money. And it was always in an envelope, and it was always in the tree. Now, she had other little things too, but it was so fun to go to her house on Christmas Eve and to find your name hidden in the branches of the tree with a $5 bill or whatever it was inside there. So I just thought these envelopes were so pretty that they definitely could be tree gifts. You know, they just have that little touch. So that's an idea. I came up with this next card design because of all of these cutouts that you have after you've created your cards with the kit. So you have 5 of these and 5 of these. I decided to layer them on top of each other for additional cards. So you could make 5 more cards using those pieces. I also thought it'd be fun to bring in the Merry Tags and More dies that coordinate with this kit, with the November kit, and with the December kit. And I actually ended up using these two. I brought in some shaded spruce cardstock for cutting this die with, and then I also brought in some basic black and some real red for this piece. I've got some extra embellishments. We have little snowflakes. And then for the base of our card, because again, we're just using these leftover pieces and some stamps, okay? And then I've got basic white for the base of our cardstock. So we'll take and cut our base cardstock. I'm going to show you a couple different versions. So I'm going to score first across both pieces, and then I'll turn it this way and cut. Let's bring in our Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine and die cut branches. We need our base plate number 1, die adapter plate number 2, scratchy plate, our cardstock, and our die, and another plate on top to sandwich it all. Let's crank it through. That's a pretty good cut. Let's take and pull. Oh yeah, it's a really good cut. There's one. Let's do another one. Remove all of these pieces first so that they don't cause thickness issues when die cutting. Now I'm going to take and add some of the multi-purpose liquid glue that's in my precision tip bottle, and I'm going to connect it to this black piece, just a little bit of glue here, and then I'm going to add my red one right on top of it with just a little bit of black showing through like a shadow. So cool, right? We have a little shadow underneath our Mary. This is going to get added to the front of our card. I'm just going to put it in the middle. You can see we're going to trim off a little bit of excess. Oops. Now, if you wanted to, you could add some stamped images onto this green with the shaded spruce ink that comes with the kit, and like that stamp that has the branch on it. This piece is going to go on top, and we're going to have these branches coming off of like that. Let's go like that so we see the front of it. So these are going to come in like this, as if they are peeking through into the window. Note to self, trim that straight before adding it. So we're going to estimate where this one's going to go. And then I'm going to start the cut. And I can even use my long bladed scissors because that will guide me in a straight line. Add some more glue back here, or you could use your trimmer. But we want these branches to look like they're coming from the window and not from inside, which is where we are. This is the outside. This is the frame of the window. This is what's peeking out from outside. And then our Mary can go on top, and you can see it really stands out against any of that. So I think I'll add that through the middle here. If you want your Mary to be a little taller, you could add another layer of black behind it. Maybe even 2 layers. It would make it really sturdy. And then of course it would be taller. So that's one way to add dimension to a really, really thin piece. Without dimensionals, because we can't really do that, just adding multiple layers of that die. And now I feel like it needs something a little extra, which is why we have the loose snowflakes that we're going to add in. And I think I'll position them first. I think that looks good. So now I will take and lift them up one at a time and add some glue into that space. And while that's drying, we'll stamp the inside. And this is the reason why we have the Mary and the Christmas separate from each other, because if you're using that die, you can use this stamp alone. So we'll open this up. We're going to ink it up first with red and then with our tuxedo black. I'm going to ink up the top with the red and then come in with the bottom. It's really hard to see. It's tilted away from me when I'm doing the video. Okay, that looks good. So I've inked up the bottom in the black, and then I just stamp that on the inside. So now our card's going to say Merry Christmas, and I've added dimensionals to the back side. We'll add that to the front so it looks centered. Let's do another version of this card. This time, we're not going to use the dies. We're going to use this piece instead, and we're going to stamp on that with our Christmas, our Merry Christmas. And we'll be using real red and shaded spruce ink to stamp our front sentiment. So let's ink up our Christmas in red. And our Mary in shaded spruce. And then for the inside of the card, we're going to carefully add green ink to the top words. You can do that just by putting the stamp right over the top of the ink. You can see through where the ink is going. And then we'll do the bottom half of that stamp in the red. For this piece, we're going to add some branches and some berries. So this is going to go across our window in this direction. So we're going to add some branches coming out from this side and a couple from up here. And I think it's easiest if we take and just kind of mask as we stamp. So if we take and cut, this is the sticky side. If we cut along here carefully, we should be able to, I mean, it's going to be a little off, but we should be able to cover up most of that green foiling. Like that. So that should help. And then on the other side, we'll take and mask it with just a straight piece here. If the ink gets on the green foiling, it's not really going to do too much. I mean, you can wipe it away pretty quickly, but it might smear onto your paper because it's a coated surface. So if you're going to wipe it off, if it gets on the outside here, you probably want to peel this away first. If I can get under there. You'll want to peel this away first, and then you'll want to wipe off in that direction, okay? So now that we have this stuck to our grid paper, okay, this is gonna go like that, and we're gonna ink it up with the shaded spruce. Oh, I wanna do the berries first with the real red. So I created a more detailed mask for that stamp using the sticky end of the Post-it note. And now those berries have branches behind them. We're going to color them. So I'm going to open this pad up. Actually, I don't need to. The old way I used to do it was squeeze the pad together, but I've kind of gotten smarter because I don't have the strength anymore. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that ink onto a clear block, and then I'm going to grab a blender pen and pick up that color. This way you have a marker for every color if you want, right? And then I'm just running it till it's clear. This piece I'm going to add onto the front of my card. I think I'm going to do it with dimensionals. Oh, and you know what else I want to do? I want to do a few little speckles with the green ink, the shaded spruce. I'm remembering where my dimensionals are so that I don't have too much thickness when I put my snowflakes on. So I've got them in each of the four corners. I'm also going to put dimensionals behind this to make that stand out a bit. And then for just a little extra added shine, I'm going to do the same thing I did on my other cards where I added these over the top of the red berries. I'm not doing all of them, I'm just going to do 3 here. And it gives them a little bit of dimension and some shine and makes them look like they're more like real berries then. So Merry Christmas and joyful thoughts to you this season. Couple different versions. So definitely use up scraps. If you ever have scraps in your kit, make sure that you are putting them to use in some other creative way with your stamps that you have, with other products that you might have. I'm showing you how I clean up. I'm not quite done creating here, but I just wanted to demonstrate how I clean up. I always clean in between my cards here. So I use that as a guide, press my stamps down onto my plastic sheet here, and then peel this away, curving this, and then I keep my other piece of plastic, and that's how I store them. I store them together. All right, we have a scrapbook page now. For my layout, I'm going to be using pieces from the kit. I'll also be using some White Willow 12 by 12 cardstock, some Night of Navy 12 by 12 cardstock from the Neutrals pack, and some of the designer paper, the Nests of Winter designer paper, which coordinates with this kit. Nests of Winter is the products that you'd see in the mini catalog, and they are meant to coordinate with the designs that are in the Nests of Christmas kit that we're playing with. Okay, these two card pieces are the same size. They're 4 1/4 inches wide. This one's a little narrower. Basically what you want to do is you want to take and cut your strips. You're going to cut strips from these, and I believe I cut a couple strips at 1 1/4. And then I took the rest of this and cut it in half, and I just positioned it in my trimmer so that this channel was going down the middle, and it looked like I had an even amount of cardstock on each side of the trimmer. So again, this is my smaller piece of the two. We're going to stack those two on top of each other, and then either direction we're going to take and trim corner to corner. And you want to place that, it's kind of hard to hold on to, you can use a sticky note if you need to. You're going to place that blade right in the middle, holding on to this so that the paper doesn't move, and cut from the middle out, from the middle down to cut your triangular pieces. So you're going to cut a bunch of those from these sheets, and you'll end up with tons of little triangles. Then what we want to do with these is we want to cut them straight across like that. We're going to cut into the middle, and then we're going to cut towards that middle. And I only went about 1/4 inch in on the thicker pieces. Let's see here, cut straight across, cut into the middle, and then about a little over 1/8 inch on the smaller pieces, so that we're just creating little banner ends on all of these triangles, okay? I have a bunch of strips that I had cut because I made a ton of cards with this paper, so I want to use my scraps. So I'm planning to use these for sure. I'm going to take my 2 pieces of Night of Navy cardstock and cut them to the 8-inch mark. And we're going to add those strips. And now I'm going to take these 2 layers and I'm going to add the dark side over here to my my White Willow cardstock base. And I'm leaving this so that I can tuck things underneath it. Okay, so I have the start of my layout. Now I'm going to take these pieces and I'm going to start tucking them underneath these layers here. I'll start with this wide one, and I want it to be about 1 inch away from this edge. I'm going to go ahead and add that, and if you want to, you can use a ruler or your grid paper to find that center point. I do like to have things symmetrical on my projects that I create. So I'm going to set this right here. I see my 6-inch mark. I'm going to take and add that underneath here so that it's poking out at about the 6-inch mark. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing to the other side. And if I lay them next to each other like this, I can get them fairly straight. That looks pretty good. And from this point, I'm going to go ahead and start tucking more of these strips underneath. So I'm just going to take and add adhesive. And I want them to stay about 1 inch or so away from this edge. We're going to take a moment to create the focal points of the pages, the title area, the journaling area, And we're going to use these envelopes from the kit. I'm just going to cut off the top portion of each envelope. So I'm working out with one at a time here though, but I have two of these, and I'm going to do the same thing too. This piece here that we just decided not to make into long triangles is going to become a photo mat. We're going to cut it in half, but first let's cut it down to 4 inches. And then we'll cut it in half at 2 3/4 inches. And this will be just a unique photo mat. So if we're mounting a photo on top of it, we'll have a little hint of that branch underneath. So that'll go smack dab in the middle of each envelope. Again, we're doing 2 of these. So the next step is we want to have these branches kind of overlap with a little bit of white edging on them. And you can see that the photos, if centered, go right up to those berries. So I want to cut all of the stuff that's beyond the berries, just kind of going around this branch here. We're going to use the glass mat because it's a really nice surface for a cutting blade. And we're going to take the Take Your Pick tool, remove the gummy end, and grab our cutting blade. This is an attachment that you can buy separately. And so then we'll just start going around these branches. Just press down and in. It's a really nice surface to cut on, and you get a real smooth cut. You can twist your paper as you're cutting. Just be careful not to cut yourself. And remember, we don't want to go too much lower. And then we're just going to pop up that layer here, and we can tuck this in here and see what it looks like. And that looks pretty good. This one is going to become our title piece. It's going to be on our left page. I'm using Snow Day, which is a new stamp set. I love it because it is made for scrapbooking. It's got all these great titles in it. We're going to use the one that says What Fun. I love that it's photopolymer. You can see right through it, so you can aim it for wherever you are stamping. You can mount it onto one of our clear blocks. I like to mount my stamps diagonal on blocks so that I'm not relying on the edges of my blocks for stamping. Instead, I'm looking straight at that image as I'm stamping down. So because we have a very solid image for our title, we want to make sure that we have the Stampin' Pierce mat underneath. It's going to give us a good cushion for stamping our photopolymer, but also give us an even inking when we're using thick or solid stamps, I should say, solid stamp images. So I'm using the same color that you get in your kit, and I do have a nicely inked ink pad. That's important. If you run out of ink, say for your ink spots that you get in your kits, you can buy refills, just so you know. Okay, so I'm going to ink this up, and I'm checking to make sure it looks pretty even. I've got this laying on here where I want it, and then I'm going to stamp my title right in that spot. And I'm going to hold for a while. Holding for a while allows that ink that's on the stamp to penetrate into the paper. And then we'll pull that away, and we have a nicely inked title. Yay. When we prepped our Night of Navy layers, we cut them 8 inches wide, which left us 4 inches by 12 inches. And I've just cut this one in half, so I now have 2 pieces that are 4 by 6, great for mounting photos. We're going to angle those inward like this, and this piece is going to go on top in this section here. And then we want to have some accent pieces. So our page is coming together. We're going to take our accent pieces from the kit. We're going to cut this little bird out, and then we're going to cut those branches. I've already cut my bird, and now I'm going to cut around my branches so that we can use these pieces to kind of give some fun imagery around the pages. The other piece that I'm going to use is the one that we had cut before for our card, and we could pretend like we've already used this one, or you can bring it in if you didn't do that card. But again, you just cut straight across in this section, and then you take what's left and you cut a straight line through both of it right between this branch here. So I have a piece like this, and I have another one that looks like this. I'm also going to use this cute little chickadee, And we could, if we want to do some fussy cutting, use these pieces from our cut envelope flaps. I love fussy cutting, so I did cut my pieces from my envelope flaps, and I'm going to add them in these little tucked areas here underneath this photo edge and the top of my title area. This piece is going to get stuck in here, but I wanted to point out that this is a pocket, right? When we cut the envelope, we did not cut it away from the rest of the layers. So if you really wanted to, you could take and add, say, a journaling type of, like if you had extra words that you wanted to write, you could tuck those into this spot. However, I just want to also point out that you cut through, and so you might have something that prevents your pieces from going into your envelope if you have like real jagged cuts in here. It would also be a great place to put paraphernalia, tickets, you know, that sort of thing. So if you want to put something in there, you could, and then you attach this piece to it so that it's kind of like the part that pulls it out of your pocket. I have a very symmetrical layout. I'm just doing a mirror of what I did on my other page for the right one. And when you put your adhesive on the back side of this envelope piece, make sure that it's in far enough. I may not have gotten it in far enough here. I'm going to kind of hold it here to see. Make sure that it's in far enough so that you can tuck pictures under here. And it looks like I have the ability to do that. So yay, I will just stick this down. And my birds are on dimensionals, and my branch pieces I've curled up just a little bit on the ends. In fact, I even took and put my bone folder underneath these little areas here to make them pop up a little bit. So it's almost done now, but I'm going to do a little bit of accenting. I'm going to add some stamp imagery from the Paper Pumpkin stamp set. I'll use those little dots, and I want to show you if you stamp once, twice, 3 times, what you're getting. You're getting the shaded spruce color, and then you're getting lighter and lighter versions that actually come very close to this lighter blue that's in the kit in the designer paper. So I'm going to use my grid paper to stamp off. I'm going to stamp onto my grid paper, which is removing ink, and then I'm going to stamp onto my pages. I'm also going to add a little bit of Wink of Stella because I just want a little bit of glitz. So let's just test it on this paper here. And you can see that there's just a little bit of sparkle in with the little splatters of snow that I have on my pages. And then I added the blue and the aqua colors from the Tinsel Gem 3-pack to different areas of my page. And those are my finished pages. Thank you for watching. It builds creativity to think outside the box. Be sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can catch more Paper Pumpkin videos that I've shared using past kits and more that I'll share with future kits. Also, be sure to visit my website at stampyourartout.com so that you can view close-up photos of these projects, see photos of other Paper Pumpkin kit ideas, and see many other great ideas that I share using Stampin' Up! Products. If you're watching my video on YouTube, look for the links in my description below. I hope that you enjoyed this video tutorial. Now I'd like you all to go and stamp your art out. Bye-bye.